Hi, Cornerstone family. I trust this finds you well and resting in our Father's peace, and dare I say it, maybe even some of His joy. I want to share a few thoughts with you today about joy. I want to read to you from James chapter 1, verse 2. It says, "Consider it all joy, my brothers and sisters, when you encounter various trials." James is very clear in what he's saying here. He says, consider it all joy. There's no holding back. There's no second guessing. It's just all joy about these trials that we are facing, that are coming our way. And we all have trials, especially now, don't we? We have big ones like COVID-19, which is keeping us feeling isolated and away from our friends and our family, and is changing our everyday lives. We have medium-sized trials, like we're always running out of milk and it's not so easy just to go to the store, and online learning is getting more and more difficult for families and kids. We have little trials and tribulations, just the monotonous of our days and the annoyances of things being different for us. This is something that is true for all of us in this world today. The difference is how we handle it. That's what sets us apart as Christians, is the way that we handle these things. And James is telling us that we should consider it all joy when we encounter these trials in our life. Well, why? Well, let me keep reading to you. Verse 3 says in James chapter 1, "Consider it all joy, knowing that the testing of your faith produces endurance." Endurance means stability under pressure. It's the ability to not be destroyed or even disheartened by what we're facing. And then James goes on to say, let endurance have its perfect result, so that you can be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. Perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. To me, that sounds like being like Jesus. So what do we do when we feel like we're lacking, like we don't have what it takes to endure these trials and these pressures that we're under? Well, James isn't finished. Let me read verse 5 to you. "But if any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives to all men generously and without reproach, and it will be given to him." So it says, if you lack wisdom, if you lack anything, especially wisdom, you ask it of God. You see, as his children, we get to go straight to the source. And then it says that he gives it to everyone. God doesn't decide, I've only got a little bit of wisdom for today and only certain people can have it. That wisdom is for everyone who calls him as their Father. It says that he gives it generously and without reproach. It's abundant. It's more than we could have imagined. And he doesn't make us feel foolish for lacking that wisdom. He never says, I'm sorry, I gave you wisdom yesterday and look what you did with it. It's without reproach. And it says that it will be given to him. There's no hesitation. There's no wait and see. It's ours. So how do we have joy when everything else around us appears to be so lacking in joy? Well, I believe that what James is really telling us is that we can have joy when we continue to endure in faith. When we believe that God is in control of everything that we're facing, that gives us joy. We can have joy when we rest in his perfect love for us as we strive to be more like Jesus. And nothing could give us more joy than that. And I think that we can have joy by knowing that we can go straight to the source for the wisdom that we so desperately need. And that we, if we call on God's name, are lacking in nothing. And those things should give us joy. As I was getting ready for this devotional, I was thumbing through my dad's Bible, and I found this quote that he wrote in the back flap, and I'd like to read it to you. It says this. It says, "When I try, I fail. And when I trust, God succeeds." Some of you may not know that my dad was a pastor when he was alive. And so when I read his Bible, I'm getting the words of both of my fathers, and they are so precious to me. You see, my dad knew what it was to face trials and tribulations, and he knew what it was to try and do it on his own. And he learned early on that he would fail every time. But when he trusted in God, then there was success. When he trusted in God to give him joy, when he trusted in God to help him through these trials and tribulations, it was his joy that shone through my father. And you could see it in his ministry, and you could see it in his life. My dad knew that it was God's wisdom that would carry him through, and that it was an abundant supply that God was willing to share. I've learned from my dad and from my Heavenly Father that I can trust God to help me succeed, and that I can have joy even in these hard days. The question becomes, why is it so important for us as Christians to have joy? Why do we have to have it right now? Why can't we just wallow in our own troubles and our own self-pity? Frankly, we deserve it, don't we? Why do we have to think about others now? It's hard enough just to take care of ourselves. Well, I believe it's important for us as Christians because the world is watching what we do. The world is listening to what we say. The world is taking their cues, hopefully, from us if we give them that opportunity. This is the time to share God's joy. So my challenge to my Cornerstone family is this: how will you share God's joy today? Thanks for listening.